They say you can't fight City Hall. But what about a homeowners association? Picture this. You've saved for years, bought your dream property, acres of untouched land just outside city limits. A peaceful slice of countryside where you plan to build a life. Maybe raise animals. Maybe grow something real. But there's one problem. Access. The land sits behind a neglected, overgrown dirt trail, barely wide enough for a pickup. Rain turns it into a swamp. Summer bakes it into a cracked mess. So you make a decision. You pave it. You hire the trucks. You grade the earth. You pour concrete 1 foot after the other. Building what's yours with your own hands, or at least with the money from them. And then, one morning, you drive up to your new road and find a gleaming metal gate blocking it off. Padlocked, stamped with the cold, unmistakable seal of the local HOA. But here's the kicker. You're not part of the HOA. How did it come to this? Let's rewind. The story begins in the early 2000s, in a quiet, semi-rural corner of the American South. Let's call the protagonist Jake, though his real name is buried deep in court records and public forums. Jake was a retired veteran with a dream of turning 40 acres of forest and field into a working farm. He had the land, the tools, the know-how, and the will. What he didn't have was a road. His property lay just beyond a small, affluent housing development, Willow Creek Estates. A collection of well-manicured homes with white fences, coordinated mailbox designs, and most crucially, a homeowners association that liked things just so. They had CCRs, covenants, conditions, and restrictions that could stretch dozens of pages. They dictated paint colors, lawn heights, fence styles, but their jurisdiction ended with the neighborhood's boundaries. Jake's land wasn't part of that. However, his only feasible access was an old gravel maintenance road that had once been used by logging trucks decades earlier. It wasn't maintained by the city or the county, and technically, it ran adjacent to Willow Creek, just outside the HOA's claimed territory. Jake thought, no problem. He contacted the county, verified that the easement was public and legal, and filed a permit to pave the road. Not for anyone else, just so he could get to his property year-round, without tearing up his suspension or getting stuck in the mud. The county approved it. It took 2 weeks, 5 workers, and over $15,000 of Jake's own money. But by the end of it, he had a brand new concrete road, about 1/3 of a mile long, leading right up to his farm gate. He even installed a drainage system and a small culvert to keep runoff from washing the road out. Neighbors noticed, of course. Some waved, some didn't. A few walked their dogs along the new road, probably assuming the HOA had paid for it. Then, one day, the trouble started. It was a letter from the Willow Creek HOA board. Dear resident, it began, though Jake wasn't one. The letter thanked him for improvements made to the common access road, but went on to say that going forward, all access would require HOA authorization for security and compliance purposes. Jake laughed. Then he tossed the letter in the trash. 2 weeks later, the gate appeared. A 6-foot-high, black aluminum security gate with a keypad on one side and a keycard reader on the other. No warning, no discussion. Just a locked barrier across the road Jake had built himself. One he now couldn't drive through. Jake called the HOA. He expected confusion, maybe an apology. Instead, he got arrogance. The HOA president, a retired dentist named Warren, who locals say wore mirrored sunglasses even indoors, told Jake that the road now constituted shared infrastructure and fell under the HOA's protective umbrella. Their lawyers, he claimed, had reviewed the situation and decided that since the road touched common boundary lines, it was de facto common property. Jake's response was short: "Remove the gate or I will." 3 days later, a sheriff's deputy showed up, not to take the gate down, but to warn Jake against tampering with community property. The HOA had filed a temporary injunction. That's when Jake got a lawyer. Now, at this point, you might be wondering, how can an HOA claim ownership of something built entirely on public easement land, funded by a private citizen, and not even located within the HOA's boundaries? The answer lies in a mixture of legal ambiguity, bureaucratic indifference, and sheer audacity. Jake's lawyer discovered something odd in the county plat maps. Years earlier, when Willow Creek Estates had been developed, the builder had drawn up a map that included the gravel road as a potential future access trail. The county never approved that designation, but it remained on file. The HOA was using that outdated draft as the basis for their claim. Worse, the HOA had filed paperwork trying to annex the easement retroactively. It wasn't legal, but it looked legal enough to stall the court process. Jake was locked out of his own road, and every day the gate remained, his farm went untended. He went to the media. Local papers picked it up. Headlines like "Man builds road, HOA steals it" started circulating. A local news station ran a segment showing Jake standing in front of the gate, holding a receipt for $15,487. 23, the exact cost of the roadwork. Support poured in from around the community. Farmers, libertarians, anti-HOA Facebook groups. Someone even started a GoFundMe to help with legal fees. But the HOA didn't back down. In fact, they doubled down. They added cameras to the gate and warning signs. Private property, HOA members only. One night, someone cut the lock. No one claimed responsibility, and Jake swore it wasn't him. But the HOA accused him anyway and pushed for criminal charges. They failed, but the tensions kept rising. It wasn't just about the road anymore. It was about control, about principle, about drawing a line, literally, between personal liberty and communal oversight. Jake's lawsuit moved slowly. HOAs have time, money, and lawyers. Jake had stubbornness and truth. And after almost 2 years of legal sparring, depositions, and hearings, a judge finally issued a ruling. The HOA had no right to the road. The easement was public. The improvements were private. The annexation attempt was invalid. The gate had to go. Jake didn't wait. He brought a backhoe. Not at night, not in secret, but at noon, with cameras rolling and a small crowd cheering. He tore the gate out of the ground and loaded it onto a trailer. He mailed it back to the HOA president's house with a note that read, "Return to sender." But the story doesn't end there. The HOA tried to appeal. They failed again. The court ordered them to pay Jake's legal fees, nearly $60,000. But recovering that money would take years. The HOA's insurance dropped them. Several board members resigned. And Warren, he vanished from public life not long after. Jake, for his part, finally built his farm. He raised goats, grew tomatoes, and hosted weekend tours for curious locals. Some came just to see the road that started a war. A stretch of pavement that looks like any other until you know the story behind it. And if you ask Jake whether it was all worth it, the sleepless nights, the courtrooms, the thousands spent on lawyers, he just smiles and says, "I'd pave it again." Because in the end, the road wasn't just about access. It was about ownership of land, of effort, of principle. And maybe that's the part the HOA never understood. You can write rules, you can build gates, you can file all the paperwork you want. But there are still places in America, quiet, wild places, where a man with a shovel, a dream, and a little bit of concrete can still stand his ground. And sometimes, when the gate slams shut in your face, you just bring a backhoe and open it yourself.